Welcome to our deep dive into Frank Herbert's Dune.
Okay.
Um, it's a sci-fi epic
Yeah.
set in a far future
Hmm.
where humanity has colonized planets
Yeah.
and power struggles revolve around this thing called spice melange.
It's wild.
And a young man's destiny is intertwined with the fate of a desert
A
planet.
desert planet, yeah.
Yeah.
And the story kicks off on Arrakis,
Okay.
also known as Dune,
Dune.
which is the only source of this all-important spice melange.
Oh, okay.
It's a harsh and unforgiving desert planet, but whoever controls Arrakis
Uh-huh.
controls the universe, basically.
I see, because they have the spice.
Because they have the spice, yeah. And melange is a drug with life-extending and consciousness-enhancing properties.
Right off the bat, in Book S, we're introduced to Paul Atreides.
Yeah.
He's the young heir of House Atreides.
Yes.
And his family has just been granted control of Arrakis.
Mm-hmm.
But there's immediate suspicion of a trap by their rivals, the Harkonnens.
The Harkonnens are brutal and
Yeah.
power-hungry.
Oh, yeah.
And they previously ruled Arrakis. They're not going to give up control easily.
I bet not.
And plus, there are other players in this game of power, like the Emperor himself,
Oh, right.
who seems to be manipulating the situation to his advantage.
Uh-huh.
And then you've got the Bene Gesserit, a secretive sisterhood with their own agenda.
Let's not forget the Fremen,
Oh, yes.
the native people of Arrakis, who've adapted to the harsh desert and have their own unique culture and beliefs.
Absolutely. They're a key part of the story.
Oh, sure.
But focusing back on Paul for a moment.
Okay.
He's not just any duke's son.
Yeah.
His mother, Lady Jessica, is a Bene Gesserit with special abilities, and she's been training him in ways that even she doesn't fully understand.
So Book I starts to get really interesting when House Atreides arrives on Arrakis,
Yeah.
and they're betrayed from the inside.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Yui, their seemingly loyal doctor, turns out to be a pawn of the Harkonnens.
Yue was forced into betraying the Atreides by the Baron Harkonnen,
Wow.
who held his wife hostage. It's a reminder that even in this complex world, personal loyalties and desperate circumstances can drive people to do terrible things.
Yeah.
His betrayal sets the stage for the devastating fall of House Atreides.
Oh, so they actually fall.
Oh, yeah. Duke Letos is killed, their forces are decimated, and Paul and Jessica are forced to flee into the deep desert.
So they escape.
They do, but they're not completely alone.
Okay.
They have Duncan Idaho, a sword master,
Okay.
and Gurney Halleck, another loyal warrior, fighting alongside them.
So how do they survive?
Well, it's in the unforgiving landscape of the desert that they encounter the Fremen.
The Fremen.
Yes, who have been waiting for the arrival of prophesied figures.
Oh, wow.
They believe Jessica and Paul are those figures,
Right.
destined to lead them to freedom and transform their planet.
This is sounding pretty epic.
It is. This encounter sets the stage for Paul's transformation into Muad'Dib.
Muad'Dib.
Yes,
Book 2 picks up 2 years later.
right.
And Paul has fully embraced the Fremen way of life.
Mm-hmm.
Even taking the name Muad'Dib, he's mastered their fighting techniques.
He's really come into his own.
Yeah. And his powers, amplified by the spice,
Right.
have grown significantly.
Yeah.
He's become a leader among the Fremen. But what about the Harkonnens?
The Baron Harkonnen is still scheming,
Oh, I bet.
trying to regain control of Arrakis and usurp the Emperor.
Wow.
He's also grooming his nephew, Fade Rotha, as a potential successor.
Okay.
So he's thinking ahead.
Yeah,
The Baron is playing a dangerous game, though.
I imagine.
He may have underestimated the Fremen and the power of the young man he sought to control.
That sounds like a classic villain mistake.
It does, doesn't it?
So Paul has grown in power, and the Baron continues the scheme.
Yes.
In the middle of all this political intrigue, what's happening in Paul's personal life?
Well, Paul falls in love with Chani,
Okay.
the daughter of the Fremen leader Liet Kynes.
Mm-hmm.
He and Chani eventually have a son together,
Wow.
and he also teaches the Fremen advanced fighting techniques, preparing them for a conflict he knows is coming.
He knows it's coming.
Yeah, Paul's relationship with Chani and the birth of their son show that even amidst these extraordinary circumstances, there are human stories of love, family, and loss.
That brings us to the end of Book 2.
Yes.
What can you tell us about Book 3, The Prophet?
Book 3 begins with a power shift on Arrakis.
Okay.
The Baron abandons his nephew Rabban, leaving him vulnerable to attack.
He abandons him.
He does computer. The Fremen discover this, and under Paul's leadership, they seize control of the capital.
Oh, wow.
However, the Emperor, now aware of the Fremen threat, arrives on Arrakis with the Sardaukar.
The Sardaukar.
Is a light fighting force along with the Harkonnens, setting the stage for a final showdown.
That sets us up for a pretty dramatic climax, I'd imagine.
You could say that the Fremen launch a devastating attack on the Imperial forces in the Harkonnens, fueled by their belief in Muad'Dib and their mastery of the desert environment.
Wow.
It's a truly thrilling battle.
Well, you've piqued my interest.
The
Tell me more about how this battle plays out.
Fremen, using their intimate knowledge of the desert and unconventional tactics, overwhelm the technologically superior Sardaukar.
Really?
Yes, their fighting skills, honed by Paul and fueled by the spice, prove unstoppable.
The Fremen are really strong.
They are. Meanwhile, Paul's sister, who possesses powerful and somewhat unsettling abilities, confronts and kills Baron Harkonnen.
Wow, I'm starting to see how this confrontation lives up to the hype.
It does. What happens to Paul? During the battle, tragedy strikes as Paul and Shenny's son is killed, highlighting the terrible cost of war and the complexities of destiny. However, Paul ultimately faces Feyd-Rautha in a duel
Okay.
that is steeped in cultural significance and carries the weight of centuries of conflict. Their duel is not just a physical battle. It represents a clash of ideologies and visions for the future.
So who wins the duel?
Paul emerges victorious.
He does.
Yes. He then issues an ultimatum to the Emperor: abdicate or be destroyed.
Wow.
Faced with the overwhelming power of the Fremen, the Emperor chooses to step down.
So Paul wins.
He does.
That's the end of the book.
Not quite.
Okay.
With the Emperor defeated and the Harkonnens destroyed, Paul ascends to the imperial throne.
Wow.
He marries the Emperor's daughter Irulan as a strategic move to solidify his power.
Oh, so he's playing the game?
He is. He now controls the spice in the known universe.
It sounds like he got everything he wanted.
In a way, however, his victory comes at a great personal cost.
Okay.
He has lost his son and is haunted by the sacrifices made along the way.
So it sounds like the ending is more bittersweet than a clear-cut victory.
Exactly. And it leaves us with many questions.
Like what?
Like, what will Paul's reign be like? Will he be able to escape the trappings of power and bring peace and prosperity to the universe? Or is he destined to become the tyrant he swore to overthrow? We'll have to delve into those questions in more detail.
That's an excellent overview of the first 3 books. I'm already hooked on this story. Wow, what a wild ride those first 3 books are. It sounds like Dune has a lot to say about power, destiny, and the choices we make.
It really does. There are so many layers to this story.
What really stands out to you about the story so far?
One of the things that fascinates me is the way Herbert explores the relationship between humanity and nature, particularly through the Fremen and their connection to Arrakis.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier how the Fremen have adapted to this harsh desert environment. It makes you wonder, is Herbert suggesting that our environment dictates our values?
That's a great question. The Fremen's reverence for the sandworms, those colossal creatures that rule the desert, is a perfect example. They see the worms not just as monsters, but as essential parts of the ecosystem.
Right.
Their life cycle is intertwined with the production of spice, you see.
Oh, I see.
It's a very different perspective from those who see Arrakis simply as a source of wealth and exploitation.
That contrast between ecological harmony and ruthless ambition really comes through in the conflict between the Fremen and the Harkonnens.
Exactly.
Speaking of the Harkonnens, the Baron is such a larger-than-life villain. I'm curious what makes him so compelling.
What's interesting about the Baron is that he's not just a one-dimensional bad guy. Herbert gives him depth, exploring his motivations and even his twisted sense of humor.
It's funny you mentioned his sense of humor because it's so dark and unsettling.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, well, I probably shouldn't repeat some of the things he says.
Right, some of his jokes are definitely not for the faint of heart. But I think that's part of what makes him so memorable. He's a product of a system that rewards ruthlessness.
Yeah.
And he plays the game masterfully, yet ultimately he underestimates the power of the people he's oppressed.
That seems to be a recurring theme in Dune. The idea that those in power often fail to see the strength and resilience of those they exploit. The Fremen's victory is a reminder that even the most formidable empires can be toppled.
Absolutely. Herbert is clearly critical of empires and the concentration of power in the hands of the few. He shows us the resentment and potential for revolution that simmers beneath the surface when those in power ignore the needs of the people.
It makes you think about the parallels to our own world and the importance of challenging those in authority. So much of Dune feels relevant to contemporary issues.
Definitely. The themes of environmentalism, political intrigue, and the dangers of unchecked power are all incredibly timely.
And what about Paul's journey? He achieves this incredible victory, but at a great personal cost. It raises questions about the nature of prophecy and whether he truly has free will. What are your thoughts on that?
That's one of the most thought-provoking aspects of Dune. Paul's ascent to power is both a triumph and a tragedy.
Yeah.
He gains control of the universe but loses his son, and he's trapped by his own prescience. He's forced to make difficult choices knowing the potential consequences. It makes you wonder if destiny is a blessing or a curse.
It's a question that resonates throughout this story. You mentioned earlier that we delve deeper into Paul's reign and the questions it raises. What can you tell us about what happens after Paul becomes emperor? It sounds like Paul's journey takes a really complex turn after he assumes the throne. It makes you wonder if power is inherently corrupting or if there's a way to wield it for good.
Well, Herbert doesn't offer any easy answers.
No.
He leaves us grappling with those very questions. What we do know is that Paul's reign is marked by both progress and turmoil.
Okay.
He implements sweeping reforms, attempting to transform Arrakis into this paradise he envisions.
Okay.
He also faces resistance from those who fear his power and resent his control over the spice.
So he's walking a tightrope between his vision for a better future and the realities of political power. Did he manage to break free from the cycle of violence that plagued the previous regime?
That's the million-dollar question. Dune ends on a note of ambiguity, leaving us to ponder the long-term consequences of Paul's actions. Herbert seems to suggest that even the best intentions can be twisted, especially when absolute power is involved.
It's a powerful reminder that leadership, even with noble goals, is fraught with challenges and ethical dilemmas. It makes you think about the nature of prophecy and free will. If Paul's path was predetermined, could he have chosen a different course? Or was he always destined to become both savior and tyrant?
Those questions are at the heart of Dune's enduring appeal. It's a story that stays with you long after you finish reading it, prompting you to examine your own beliefs about power, responsibility, and the choices we make as individuals and as a society.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the political intricacies of the Imperium to the ecological wonders of Arrakis and the Fremen's unique culture. What would you say is the most important takeaway for someone new to Dune?
I think it's the interconnectedness of everything. Herbert masterfully weaves this tapestry of interconnectedness, showing how even seemingly insignificant actions can have far-reaching consequences. From the delicate balance of the desert ecosystem to the ripple effects of political decisions, Dune reminds us that we are all part of a larger web of life and our choices matter.
That's a powerful message, and one that feels more relevant than ever. Dune is more than just a science fiction adventure. It's a story that speaks to our hopes, fears, and the enduring questions about humanity's place in the universe. I think we've only scratched the surface of this complex and fascinating world.
We have, and that's the beauty of Dune. It's a story that rewards multiple readings, revealing new layers of meaning each time you delve into its intricate world. So to our listener, I encourage you to embark on this incredible journey and discover the wonders and complexities of Dune for yourself.
Well, that was our deep dive into Dune.
Yes.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.